pressure medication. It's just that sometimes it has to be defined. If you ask a question like, what would you say if I said, what is high blood pressure? So it's just, you gotta be careful not to go down the wrong tube.
But aren't there some specifics that they have, yeah.
Yeah.
So would you answer that question for him?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll see people like that will be on medications for certain things and they don't check the appropriate diagnosis. And we talk about it and then I go back and change the
Right.
form.
Yeah, but in a situation like high blood pressure is one of these things that isn't clearly defined.
Well, I think it is.
I think
Yeah,
it
it
is in
is.
part
It's
67.
I mean, there's certain numbers.
It's
It
a
is.
debatable number though, and
Well,
that number
but
has
it
changed
isn't.
over.
That's a conservative number, if you ask me.
Yeah.
It's 150 over 95, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the FAA number is super high,
Or 150.
but if you're on medication for it, you have the diagnosis, somebody to give you medication without a diagnosis.
Okay, but just what we've been talking about, when you say to me the FAA number is high and this number is low, that tells me, and I'm a research scientist in the medical industry, so I would say clearly the data isn't defining anything because you're showing me 3 different numbers, and if there's 3 different numbers, then it's not clearly defined.
Well,
The FAA defines it.
yeah, I mean, the FAA definition is very high, and that's because their number is based on what number is gonna cause you disability in the airplane in the next 24 months. The medical establishment looks at a number that what is gonna cause you disability over the next 20 years.
I understand, I didn't mean to get into a debate about
I
this.
think the simple answer to your question is if your blood pressure is over, what's
I
the,
think it's 150 or 155 over 90 or 95.
Well, right, that's the FAA, but the medical community
Different
defines it
world.
as
Yeah.
120 over 80.
but my point being in the FAA world, if you are over those numbers, and that's an objective fact, if you are over those numbers, I would say, well, talk to your AMA, I think you're gonna be, you're not meeting, you're in excess of the FAA's numbers, so in the FAA's mind, yes, you do have high blood pressure, is that?
Right, if you're on a medication, and whether you check hypertension or not, if you're on that medication, you're gonna have to follow the rules for hypertension that go along with that
So,
medication.
and that's kind of where it gets kind of really confusing, because there's so many medications that you're taking that's not for the thing that the FAA is worried about. Ozempic is a good example of that. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you have, diabetes, because you're taking it for weight loss. Now,
Well, I
things
don't,
have
I don't wanna go down this path.
changed.
As I say,
You can always get, what's it called, the AME, a special issuance. So, I mean, holding back on your medical history, I don't think it's the right route. You should probably,
I didn't say hold back on your medical history, I just said make sure that you're not assuming your medical history isn't really your medical history.
Right.
Not over volunteering.
That's exactly right, don't, over volunteer a diagnosis that you're really not diagnosed for.
but the good news is, I always say, talk to your AME and say, how should I answer this question? Because you're gonna get, of all the ambiguities and of all of the things that can turn on whatever, you go with the answer of your AME would be my suggestion, so. This is another little kicker here, the National Driver Register. Many people say, yeah, gosh, I remember, particularly you get student pods, yeah, I had something way back when I was in college, and it's not gonna show up anymore, and maybe it won't, but there's a really good chance that whatever that potential violation was, a speeder, a DUI, whatever it might have been, DUI that let's say you beat it, and maybe you should have, but you still had to take some type of classes, whatever it might be. You've got to be really, really careful because the FAA's review of the National Driver Register, I just can't tell you how many people come to me and say, my gosh, I forgot about that, it was so long ago. And in those cases, we'll point that out to the FAA, and hopefully you get somebody who's willing to listen to reality. But as I said, the FAA will be checking your driver's record, and this is how they will do it, through the National Driver Register, and it's a pretty accurate database. Yes,
So,
sir.
make sure I hear that right. You're saying they actually can see or go back and look at, let's say your high school, when you were in high school, you had 5 speeding tickets or whatever.
Well,
Do
it
you
depends
take
on
them
if
back
it's-
that far, really?
It's not them going back that far, it's what appears about you on the National Driver Register.
Okay,
And there's a process where you can actually find out what that is that's on that register.
okay.
So it's just, it's something that people have to be aware of and have to be thinking back, what types of things that I might have had an issue with. Okay, we talked about this one, but, all right, now this one here, do you currently use any medication? This is kind of along the lines of what we were just chatting about. Currently use any medication, prescription or not? It says yes below it. So bottom line being that the FAA wants to know what you're taking. And I err on the side of caution. I can put down the supplements that I take. Should I do that? I don't know. I mean, I think I should, yeah. So they really want to know what are the medications that you are taking.
Can I add something to that?
Sure, go ahead.
I know the FAA, and I could be wrong on this, but the FAA themselves do not issue any list of FAA-approved medications, but AOPA has what they call, what they've heard and what they've confirmed over the years of what the FAA accepts on the AOPA's website. Is that a good resource to still use, AOPA's website of medications?
Yes.
That are approved and not approved?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I don't want to beat our heads against the wall on this whole question 18, but it's a minefield of potential issues. So again, please be very, very cognizant when you fill this out. And if you have any question whatsoever, before you check a box, and make sure you don't check a box, because is it still the case that when someone starts filling out a form, they can't change the answer that they've initially given? Of course, now a lot is computerized.
It's computerized, and they could come in and have me change it,
Mm-hmm.
and then they can certify their change if
Okay.
they did something wrong.
All right, everybody catch that? So like I say,
But
yeah.
yeah, they're gonna see that it was changed. Big thing last year was the medical disability thing. That was a big legal issue with FAA last year.
Such as what types of disability?
Mostly military benefits. People that were on military disability
I remember
and
that.
weren't putting it on their FAA form. Last year, somehow, I forget the reasoning, but the FAA got together with the military people and they cross-referenced, and they had this list of 3,000 or 4,000 people that weren't checking the boxes that were getting benefits. And they gave them a grace period to fess up, and if not, then they were going to potentially take legal action.
Yeah, I do remember. I didn't end up dealing with anybody, but some of my colleagues had mentioned that
I
that's a
remember reading
problem.
about that.
How many of you are familiar with the NASA program, NASA Immunity, Get Out of Jail Card? Yeah, by these days, we hope everybody is. We've put numerous articles in Sport Aviation, AOPA's had them in AOPA Pilot, and it's a great program. We jokingly call it the Get Out of Jail Card, because if you commit a violation, and if the FAA comes after you for a suspension, even a civil penalty, if you do file a NASA report, that particular sanction may be waived by the FAA. It's got to be something that was inadvertent. You can't go out and buzz somebody's house and then file a NASA report. Okay, that ain't gonna work. But if you bust an altitude, just something again that's inadvertent, it might be worthwhile for you. Now, we used to joke about, geez, where do you get these forms? Yes, sir.
So one thing also that you haven't mentioned, that today is also an issue for pilots that are also Part 107,
Okay.
is that if you do something on your Part 107, as doing a job and you busted up any of those things and everything,
Mhm.
you need also to file one of those, because whatever you did in the Part 107 job can influence what they're gonna do to your pilot license, because one is attached to the other one. So if you screw up in here, they can remove all of your certificates just because you screw up on the Part 107.
Make sure everybody knows you're not about drones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about drones.
Drones, yeah,
remote.
sorry, yeah.
Part 107.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can happen, it does happen. It's one of the things that we're really arguing about with FAA right now, because and for all the obvious reasons, it just doesn't make sense. But in any event, I was gonna say before, where do you get these forms? We used to say, when next time you're at the airport, just track down an airline captain because he's got a flight case bag full of NASA reports. Well, the good news is today, it's all online. We used to have to send the form in, get the registered mail receipt. No, you don't have to do any of that anymore. It's all online. So file often. It is a good program. Many things come up, safety issues that otherwise would not have come up. Things that you wouldn't even think about. Let's say, for example, an intersection at a particular airport. All of a sudden, there's things popping up and pilots are sending in to NASA reports about what happened in this particular spot. And NASA does a great job of compiling it, publishing the information. It's a great program. These are all the different folks, probably didn't even think about cabin crew can file. Yes, cabin crew too. So again, if you commit a violation, if something comes up, think of filing a NASA report. We've covered these things: inadvertent, not deliberate, no criminal offense, lack of competency, that's other things come into play there. No prior violation for 5 years. There is an immunity period. And again, make sure you get that filed within 10 days. That's the key. Literally, if you file on the 11th day and you try to invoke your NASA, as we call it, NASA immunity, not going to work. It's got to be within 10 days. TFRs, there's good. So many NASA reports filed about TFRs, and it does work. They will accept it. So again, got to be, if it's intentional violation or an accident, again, no NASA immunity. And as we said here, most airline captains are online. This is interesting. This is 1 year, it's a few years ago now, the number of reports that were filed. And if you'll see, air carrier